Hi, today we are going to discuss the third poem prescribed for 12th grade students. It's from the textbook Flamingo. The title of this poem is Keeping Quiet and it's authored by Pablo Neruda. Pablo Neruda was a Chilean poet, diplomat and politician who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971. Now, he was a Chilean. A Chilean is a person who belongs to Chile. Chile is a country in Western South America. Hence, we can say that he was a Western South American poet. Neruda became known as a poet when he was just 13 years of age and wrote in a variety of styles. It's interesting to note that the poet won two very important or renowned peace prizes, the one being the International Peace Prize and the other being the Lenin Peace Prize. Hence, he was a propagator, a promoter, a proponent and advocate of peace and peaceful living. This poem is a crystal clear example of his thought on this. In a sense, we can say that it is an epitome of his thought on peace and peaceful living. This poem throws light on peace, humanity and brotherhood. It talks about the necessity of quiet introspection and creating a feeling of mutual understanding among human beings. In the present day of fast lives, we need to think about, we need to find the cause of sadness. Life is, life has become all about wars and misunderstanding. The poet advises his readers to break free of this routine by self-introspection. So I am sure you must have understood a general idea what this poem is about. With this viewpoint, with this background, let's try to understand this poem line by line and it will be crystal clear for us. Let's see, it's written in a very easy language, not at all complicated to understand. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. The poet proposes, he says that we will count to 12 and we will all keep still, means we will all be motionless, we will all stop from all the hectic activities of this life. Now, some critics are of the opinion that the word 12 specifically stands for hours or months, or in this way it specifies the duration of hour or month. Whatever it may be, one thing is very clear that it talks about time. The poet says that we count to 12 and we will all keep still. That means for that short period we should all keep still, we should all stop the hectic activities, the busy activities of the life that we indulge in. And then what would happen? For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. The poet puts forward two ideas or two things. For once on the face of this earth, let's not speak in any language means let's stop all sorts of verbal communication. Let's stop all sorts of verbal communication. And secondly, and not move our arms so much. Moving our arms much means indulging in physical activity. So he proposes that we should stop these two things. We should stop all sorts of verbal communication and physical activities for a while. We should stop and think about ourselves. We should think about the more valuable and more important aspects of life. We should indulge in what we call self-introspection by stopping these two things. And then again, further, it would be an exotic moment. It would be an exotic moment, without rush. Exotic means exciting. Why? Because we human beings are not used to such moment. We are not used to stopping our verbal communication and physical activities. Hence, it would be an exotic moment, an exciting moment. There would be no rush. Without rush, without engines, there would be no working of industries, machinery and so on. We would all be together in sudden strangeness. It is quite strange for us to be together in this way, in this fashion. But once we stop doing these things, it would, it would bring all of us together. We would have time for one another. We would have time for other human beings. So we would all be together in sudden strangeness. And then The poet further says, fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. What would happen? The fisherman in the cold sea would not harm whales means he would stop harming the other creature. Everyone would, this is just an example of a fisherman, but it is to say that no human being would harm other creatures. Even if we are so specific, we can interpret it that a fisherman would not go and harm the fish of the sea. And the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Why are the hands of the man gathering salt are hurt? It is because of the years of gathering salt, his hands are hurt. So even he should stop salt gathering, and he should think about his condition, the condition of his hand, and he also needs to stop his activities and think about himself. So that is the desire of the poet. And then again, as we read further, we see those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. Here green wars means wars against environment. So if we indulge in all sorts of activities too much, it damages the environment also. So wars against green wars means damaging the environment, war against the environment. I'm reminded of what recently I read in bold letters in a newspaper, in a leading newspaper. What government could not do in this many years has this lockdown managed to do. As you know that due to this pandemic, we had lockdown for a long period of time, and during that there was no pollution. During that period, it's because there was no very rare use of automobiles, and when there was no pollution, no industries and no machinery, even the rivers, even the water pollution had receded. And in order to point out, to refer to, the newspaper had used this expression that government could not clean rivers for this many years, but this lockdown has managed to do that. I think that's very much a perfect example of this war against this environment, or green war. And then wars with gas, wars with fire. This refers to the battles that human beings indulge in, one country against the other country. Okay, that is using the offensive or defensive weapons and so on. Victory with no survivors. Although sometimes we manage to get victory, but there are no survivors. What a pity. That's a pathetic condition. It's an irony. Although we get victory over war, but there are no survivors to enjoy. So these people who indulge in different sorts of wars, what would they do? They would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers. We would leave all sorts of enmity. We would have love for all the human beings, and we would walk with them in the shade doing nothing. But again, hereafter, the poet takes us to a different direction, and he wants to make the fact clear that his message should not be misunderstood. He says, what I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no trucks with death. He says that his statements or his teachings should not be confused with total inactivity. He doesn't want us to die. He doesn't want us to behave like dead men. So he doesn't advocate total inactivity. Life is what it is about. That means life should go on as it ought to go on. I want no truck with death. That means I don't want any association with death. And then he says, if we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. He just wants us to stop all sorts of activity only for self-introspection. Many times we are so busy in securing our future that we fail to understand that actually we are damaging our present. We are so afraid of death that in order to escape from death, what we do actually leads us to death. That is the pity of human beings. I think in order to elucidate or explain it, I can clearly say that silence and calm should not be confused with total inactivity, because inactivity would mean death, and death is the end of everything. On the contrary, the poet looks forward to a higher form of existence. Mindless activity simply leads to the misery of never having to think, and it leads to self-destruction. So he doesn't want us to stop everything. He wants us simply to think about life from a different perspective. He wants us to indulge in self-introspection, to introspect ourselves and understand the more valuable things of life. And in order to illustrate it, in order to explain this fact, he gives the example of the earth. He says, perhaps the earth can teach us as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. How can the earth teach this valuable lesson? The earth seems simply calm and quiet, but it actually nurtures life. The earth doesn't seem to indulge in hectic activities, yet it is the giver of life. So we should learn this profound lesson from the earth, that it appears to be calm and quiet, yet it nurtures life. Actually, our life should be like that. We should keep away from the hectic activities, hectic life, and yet we should keep our lives just moving. And then in the conclusion, again the poet repeats, now I will count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. The poet proposes that we count up to 12 and then he would go. I'm sure by now you must have understood the message that this poem and this poet wants to convey, that we need to have time for self-introspection. We need to change the course of life, and we need to think about the more valuable things of life. As I read this poem or as I teach this poem, I'm reminded of a beautiful poem that I would not want to read completely, but I just want to quote the initial or the starting lines that are very interesting, in which the poet says, what is this life if full of care? We have no time to stand and stare. We have no time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep and cows. No time to see when woods we pass where the squirrels hide their nuts in the grass. That means we should have time to enjoy the beauty of nature. We should have time to think about the moral values and different aspects of life that the Almighty has created us for. If you have any further question from this poem, although this poem is crystal clear and very easy, yet if you have any further questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer your queries. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so, and press the bell icon so that you don't miss any of my future uploads. I upload new videos every Saturdays. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much.